Thank you, Nat, and thank you, Ron, for the opening talk. And let's continue with the show of hands. I was wondering, are there any educators with us or teachers today? I hope to meet you. And then anybody who's edited OpenStreetMap before? Great, wow, look at all these mappers, fantastic. Anybody who's used OpenStreetMap? Okay, so we have contributors, users, that's great. I just, when I saw this conference, I just wanted to share some of the ways that we've been using OpenStreetMap at Central Washington University and the ways that we use it with students. So there's several ways that we do this. I feel that OpenStreetMap is just a great tool for teaching GIS, getting started with it, having hands-on experience with data and mapping of real-world things in the world around. We've also contributed to the data in various ways through events that we've held, and then I'll talk about ways that students have participated in research involving OpenStreetMap and how it grows, including giving back to the project. So starting out with learning GIS using OpenStreetMap, when we teach in the GIS and data management class that some of these students are in, we get started talking about vector data. It's geometries and attributes. It's shapes and then things that describe them. And there's no better way to learn that than I think by just drawing and tracing some objects in OpenStreetMap and putting tags on them. We don't have to get into some complicated desktop GIS program from the get-go. We can ease in that way, learning how to map in one's community just by tracing those things and adding the tags and attributes. So in the Intro to GIS class, one thing that I have students do is just go outside and look around and make a paper map of some of the blocks in their town that they want to go on. So they will draw and sketch out the things that they saw. They're supposed to write down everything within a 4 or 5 block radius. And then they go into electronic maps that we use every day, those maps that we turn to on our phones and devices, and zoom in and make an inventory of the things that are in those maps. What's surprising is that many times there are gaps or things that need to be added. And so then they identify some things that are missing and they choose to add those into OpenStreetMap. One benefit that this has brought is that many of these students who are taking my class are doing so in the summer online, and so they're in their own hometowns. And so we're having students map locally through local knowledge. And sometimes that occurs in very small towns that don't get as much attention in OpenStreetMap. A lot of my dissertation research was about social influences behind OpenStreetMap and who contributes where. And one thing I learned is that in small towns and rural areas, there are not very many local mappers in the project. So we've had students contributing, for example, in small towns like Orville and Kittitas, that some of their work is still visible in the map. Now, as part of this, you might be saying, well, is it dangerous to let students loose on OpenStreetMap? What if they make mistakes in the project? That's a valid question with any new mapper in OpenStreetMap. And I would argue that the best place to learn is where you have an instructor who can guide you and give you feedback and help you. One of the ways that I grade is by giving students a chance to redo their work one time if they choose, so they can respond to feedback and improve. So being able to learn OSM under the hands of an instructor that can help and guide is a very useful way to do so. Also, we want to keep right with the community. So I asked the students to use the hashtag CWGeog. So if there's any question about what a student did or where we worked, we can answer that. And then as I evaluate their work through the screen captures of the editor environment, if I see something that is really out of order and the student will not fix it, then I would take that responsibility on myself. But that has, those instances have been few and far between, thankfully. What we found is many students keep on mapping well beyond the end of the quarter. So we want to grow. I would love to grow a lot of lifelong mappers. I know that realistically that's not the case with every student, that they'll continue doing OpenStreetMap, but I believe that many do. And a piece of circumstantial evidence that I have is the map of Ellensburg is pretty detailed, and I know that my students didn't do all of this in the class. I believe that they are continuing to work on the map there. And I do know at least one of the students that came today is an active OpenStreetMapper, having started in the class and now mapping all over the world. We also want to teach users about OpenStreetMap as a geographic database and data source, how they can download and use OpenStreetMap data perhaps in their projects, as a cartographic base map or for other kinds of analysis. Definitely we talk about the gaps and missing areas in OpenStreetMap and how to be wise consumers of that data. But there are wonderful tools like the Quick OSM plugin and QGIS that make it really easy to download OpenStreetMap data, which we do in class together. During the pandemic, like almost every other GIS university instructor, I found myself recording demo videos of how to do basic things. And I thought, there must be so many other people recording these videos. What if we just shared this? And so at that point, we created a CWU geography YouTube channel and just uploaded all our videos. We're a public institution funded by public dollars. We wanted to share with the public where we could, just share the knowledge. And we found that these videos have been very popular. And so if you haven't used the Quick OSM plugin, this is one place where you can go and get a little tutorial. In 10 minutes, you could be downloading lots of OSM data. And then we have a QGIS demos playlist on this channel too, which I'd invite you to take a look at if you're learning QGIS and getting started. So we have student groups that also outside of class wanted to contribute to OpenStreetMap in different ways. Our geography club is affiliated with the Youth Mappers Network. Who's heard of Youth Mappers? It's like a network of mostly student clubs throughout the world that work to do service through mapping, many times through humanitarian OpenStreetMap projects, but also in local projects of their own making. Most of these universities are in Africa and Latin America. We have some chapters in the United States, and Central has been one for 8 or 9 years. The students plan events they want to hold. Sometimes they look to the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team to find projects or areas of need. For example, the flyer in the upper center is an event that our students planned where Doctors Without Borders had requested certain kinds of data to be added to OpenStreetMap through tracing roads and other infrastructure in a place where they were planning to deliver services and there was not extensive digital data. And so the students came to work with that. And then if there's new people who haven't used OpenStreetMap, the students taught them within 15 or 20 minutes, you can be trained to learn how to contribute in this way. But we also wanted to do local projects. So we found, or our students found, that in Yakima, which is not very far away from where we are, bus stops were not very plentiful in OpenStreetMap. And that is data that's very publicly available that we could get and work to have a mapathon to add bus stops in Yakima. So we've had kind of global vision as well as local scope in these activities contributing that build community in our own, in our university. Finally, it's been fun to involve students with research on OpenStreetMap. After using this data and contributing to it, there's a great desire to understand some of it. A lot of my research as an academic has involved OSM data quality and contribution patterns. In particular, what can we learn about who contributes to OSM and why? One project we did looked at why people get banned from contributing to OSM. As much as many people are there for reasons that are building the map, sometimes we have, you know, it's life. Sometimes things go wrong, or maybe we have people who want to ruin the project. So whenever somebody does get a block put on their account by the OpenStreetMap Data Working Group, a web page is generated that's publicly visible explaining what happened and then what the penalty is and what will happen. And we had a student 7 or 8 years ago who was learning Python in the classes and was very interested in this theme. And so he learned how to use the beautiful Soup API to like download all of these ban reports and put them in a table. And then we went through and we're trying to categorize them. We found an interesting mix of different reasons, kind of an even split between wanting to damage the project in some way, whether that's vandalism or sometimes politically motivated edits that are contrary to OSM's on-the-ground policy where the edits have to match who actually has control in the area. Some people wanted to put spam and other kinds of links in there. In other cases, there were people who just did not cooperate with the local community and engaged in edit wars or deleting other people's work. In some situations, people had good intentions but just didn't know how the project worked, and so they made mistakes. Those could be ways for further research of how to better educate or to help the users to be successful. And then sometimes there were mechanical problems where somebody unleashes a bot to go fix tags and it starts corrupting data. Or imports were a huge one, and often a very touchy one in the OpenStreetMap community from time to time. And so if imports go wrong, then a person could have their account blocked. So I think it's important to understand these. I don't think it's useful to be afraid of OpenStreetMap or run away from it from these reasons, but we do want to understand it. And so it's fun to involve students in that. There is a book chapter. This is on ResearchGate. Anybody can go read it if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of that. Another research project students were involved in, this one was more recent. We wanted to look at representation of local businesses in OSM, in particular those that are operated by or that cater to Latino communities in the inland Northwest. Here's a picture of downtown Pasco where there are many such buildings. So how thoroughly are those being mapped in OSM as well as other platforms? And we selected 4 cities. These are 4 cities that had over 30,000 people and over 30% residents identifying as Hispanic or Latino. So Yakima, Wenatchee, Pasco, and Caldwell. I was working with a graduate student on this, and she was working on her master's degree and had a research assistantship. And we used GIS to identify some commercial thoroughfares in those 4 cities where we would go on the ground. As I described earlier, we would walk around with like paper and pen and dictating notes of what businesses we could see operating at that moment. And then that same day, we would go into OpenStreetMap and Google Maps and look at what items were in those maps and then compare. We selected areas that were, or streets that were in areas of high Latino populations, as well as streets in other areas, because we wanted to compare. All in all, we walked about 28 kilometers of streets and recorded the businesses, and we also drove them with a GoPro camera just to have some backup footage to back up our notes. And then we started comparing with the different map platforms. So out of all the businesses, interestingly, when we see an internet map, like especially like Google Maps that has points all over, we get this feeling that the map is just full of data, so it must have everything. And we're not seeing what we're not seeing. Google only had about 2/3 of the things, and there were 1/3 of these businesses that were just not in the map at all. For the other platforms, it was even less. And unfortunately, in these areas, and as I mentioned, rural areas often have less participation in OSM. We had fewer than 20% of the businesses. If you look at on the chart on the right, the Latino-oriented local businesses were under 10% in OSM. But we did want to drill in and find out who added these. We were very curious about who is mapping these types of places. And we actually discovered that some of them had been added by our students in the assignments that I had been giving in class, which had no connection with this research. I didn't know I was going to do this project, but I started recognizing their usernames as we were looking at these businesses that had been added, and they were adding things in their towns that they knew. And so I have a belief that by growing student mappers and teaching them in the classroom, we are adding things of value to the map that may be missed otherwise, just through those little pieces of evidence. We did find, let me go back. We found that national chain businesses are much more represented in all 4 of these platforms than local businesses. So that is an area for OpenStreetMappers I think could be valuable for us to zero in on. And those Latino-oriented businesses and other ethnically oriented businesses often tend to be small local businesses near the center of town. And so we found those were getting missed. There are just more maps in this paper of examples of missing businesses and ones that were included, which you could read in the reference here. At the end, we had collected information about 600 businesses and their locations in these 4 cities. And we had all this data, and we then faced a decision, what do we do with it? Should we go ahead and add it to OpenStreetMap? There are some pros and cons to doing that. We thought about, will it be okay to add these if we don't know if there's a local community that will update it? How will people feel in this area if we add the data? At the same time, the whole premise of our research was that it was valuable to have these things in the map in many ways. And so we did decide to add them into OpenStreetMap, all our research notes from the GoPro footage and our surveys. We did notify the local communities, and we put we put a message on our OpenStreetMap accounts that we were doing this in case people had questions and concerns, and nobody did that we know. But this was a great exercise for a student to get some individual study credit to go through these notes. And now in those 4 cities, the maps are greatly enhanced in those locations. So that's about all the time we have to cover these, but really enjoy the enthusiasm that students bring to OpenStreetMap. I think they are a great addition to the community. If you ever have any questions or concerns about how students are engaging with the OpenStreetMap at Central or elsewhere, I'd love to talk about that. And so thank you again for the invitation for listening today. How are we doing on time? Is there time for any questions? Okay, anybody have a question? Sure.
What is sock puppetry?
Oh, okay. Sock puppetry, good question. That was one of the reasons people got banned. This is if your account gets banned and you just create another account to get around the ban. So a sock puppet is a fake account that is basically continuing to do the same thing. Yes, other question?
First of all, let me thank you for having your students contribute to OpenStreetMap. I happen to be one of the people that welcome them when they make their first edits.
Oh, that's wonderful, yeah.
And also do a little critique if there's problems. Which for the most part I don't see. Occasionally they don't square buildings, but you know, that's another thing. So I want to thank you. Also, you're interesting. I'd like to hear more about the information you have up there in that particular chart. Maybe offline we can talk about it.
Sure.
Because I do that stuff. I'm one of the people that actually ban people.
Oh, you're in the working group. Well,
I can tell you about sock puppetry better than anybody else.
oh, bet. Well, we would have some great conversations today. And yes, I do welcome feedback about things that new mappers could do better, because I can then include those in my instructions and hopefully preempt those things before they occur. So thank you for that. Yes?
Yes, just was wondering, did you have any community organizations that contacted you and say, hey, we really like that, we would like our community, we have, you know, with some people and want to collaborate with you?
We have not, although we've reached out to a few. So we reached out to a local business development in one of the cities that we were working in, just to learn a little bit more about how business owners would want their places represented in the map and how they get that done, both in all platforms, not just OSM. We also did reach out to a local small town to ask if they wanted help with putting some of their infrastructure into OpenStreetMap to have it publicly visible. Unfortunately, that didn't get a lot of traction, but I think, I don't know, my feeling is maybe especially in rural areas or smaller communities, there's less knowledge about OpenStreetMap or what it is or how it can be influenced. So we may have to do some of the outreach, but we've often found enthusiastic participants or partners with it. So thank you for the question. Great.
I, like probably a lot of people in this room, a lot of geospatial folks, only know a little bit about OSM and how it's used and how to use it. So about a year ago, I went to one meeting of the local OSM meetup group, you know, it's a meetup.com group here in Seattle. And so I wanted to learn more about it. And we basically just sat around at a table at the Seattle Center Armory, and I think the original plan was to walk around outside and do some mapping on mobile devices, but it was super rainy, so we sat inside and just talked about the mobile apps. And I asked them, like, so what's the best mobile app for doing, you know, edits? And they collectively didn't seem to really have a good answer. Like, they were like, well, this one's good for such and such, and this one's got good for such and like there was like 4 or 5 different ones. And so, what's your take on the best Android, the best iPhone, iOS app group?
We haven't done a lot of the outdoor kind of mobile data collection, so I'd maybe defer to others in the community. I don't know. Do you have one that you would recommend? That
iOS is GoMap.
GoMap. You would recommend?
Which is developed by a local person over in Kirkland. Street Complete is great for just adding features.
Street Complete?
I think sucks. So yeah, that's Android one. Vasucci. Vasucci.
Vasucci is another one being discussed. Okay. I forgot I'm supposed to repeat all the questions, so I'm... Thank you for the tips. One more question over here. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if you researched further the reason why Google Maps was higher versus Apple and Bing where they got their sources. I'm wondering if, because Google is no search engine, and if that's the reason why businesses are contributing first to those, or?
Well, I don't know. I think some of the companies are very they guard that close to themselves with how they collect data, but they are all out there kind of in silos vacuuming up their own data. And I would like to learn a lot more about how they do it. And because I'm not confident that they're going to tell me all the details, I think that's a fruitful area for research. One interesting thing we observed was outdated stuff in all of these platforms, and all the outdated stuff was different. We also saw typos, as if somebody had been entering these in and just did a quick job or didn't know the local area. We saw the ones that were missing from Google appeared within about a month. Most of them showed up. So it seemed they had a faster update cycle. I think it would be fascinating to research old stuff that hangs around in these maps, because we saw some in Microsoft Bing Maps that had been there for had been gone for 10 years and was still there, like ghost data that appears in the maps. I haven't found a lot of studies on that. So. Thank you for the questions. Yeah. Thanks.